Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. You're watching The World Today on Channels Television. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. 5 journalists reportedly amongst 20 people killed by an Israeli strike on a hospital in Gaza. Former Nigerian Consul General to the United States, Ambassador Kajiki, explores the possibility the Israeli Prime Minister planned to occupy Gaza all along. Plus, Typhoon Kajiki battering Vietnam's coastal areas with strong winds and heavy rain. Let's begin. We start off in Gaza, where 20 people have died, including 5 identified as journalists, after an Israeli strike hit a hospital in the southern Gaza Strip. Among those killed are an Associated Press journalist and an Al Jazeera journalist. At least 4 of them have been identified: Hussam al-Masri from Reuters, Mariam Daga, a freelance journalist working with the Associated Press, Mohammed Salama from Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye, and Ahmed Abu Aziz, who also worked for Middle East Eye. Authorities are still trying to confirm who the last person, Muaz Abu Tahar, worked for or with. The attack comes weeks after 6 other journalists were killed in Gaza, including 4 from Al Jazeera. The Israeli military has confirmed it's carried out an attack nearby, but not why the building, a hospital, where the now dead 5 journalists was hit. It says it ordered an initial inquiry. And as Israeli forces continue with attacks on Gaza, a hostage deal reportedly agreed to by Hamas remains on the table. Chief of Staff to the IDF says the Israeli military had brought about the conditions for a deal, and now it's in the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hands to fulfill it. Tomorrow, the Israeli cabinet is expected to discuss the latest proposal advanced by regional mediators, which Hamas accepted a week ago. It follows mass demonstrations in Israel earlier this month as hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Tel Aviv calling for an end to the Gaza war and a deal to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum said Zamir had voiced what most Israelis were demanding, including a deal to bring home all 50 remaining hostages, 20 of whom are believed to be alive, and an end to the war. A group is planning another day of mass protests on Tuesday. Well, former Nigerian Consul General to the United States and former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Kajiki, says it's likely Benjamin Netanyahu's expansionist plans were the main goal of attacking Hamas. He was sharing his thoughts and analysis on Channels Television's International Affairs program, Diplomatic Channel.
Some of the plans that you are hearing today were not drawn up yesterday. They've been in the works. They've been in the cupboards, because these are not new plans. They've thought about it many years ago. They've done the design, of it all. It's all part of the long-term Israeli strategy to take over most of the land belonging to the Palestinians, as part of the effort to destroy the two-state solution. I think what has happened in the last couple of years or decades was the fact that they have no strong international support, even from the United States. Successive governments in the United States have always cautioned them against doing things like that and have told them privately they probably will not enjoy United States support. But the presence of the coming of President Trump apparently seems to have emboldened the Israelis and, as to what they are doing today. So, yes, the plan has been on. It's not a new plan. It's just that all this you are hearing that has been approved. No, the approval has been there for a long time. They just reiterated the approval to be able to execute their long thought-out plan about taking over Palestinian lands.
But how would this fit into Netanyahu's plans to defeat Hamas, to also release all of Israeli hostages who are being held by the militant group?
Amarachi, you know what's so interesting? I think this is the second, almost the third year, Netanyahu started from day one by insisting that the goal was to defeat Hamas and really get the hostages released. But look, I also think that over the years, we have overrated the Israeli security agency. The whole world believed that Mossad was the most efficient, most dangerous, you just name it. Possibly number one, anytime you drop a list of intelligence agencies between the CIA and Mossad, they probably come between number one and number two. But what has happened over the last couple of months since this crisis started is, in my view, is the fact that we have overrated for so many years Mossad's ability and capability. Ability to resolve problems. So when you now see what is going on, you begin to wonder exactly how, despite the fact that they are classified as number one and efficient, that they cannot, for more than almost 30 or 40 months, they cannot find the hostages, in Gaza that they are occupying. And they think that they have destroyed half of the Palestinian land. Yes, in some areas, there are no buildings standing. The only time they were able to get out any sort of hostages, apart from the dead ones and the ones they found in some, were the ones released by Hamas. So how you keep saying that you want to defeat Hamas, but you have not succeeded in defeating Hamas that do not have the same military strength. So all this question of defeating Hamas, again, is part of Netanyahu's plans to do what they had always wanted to do. This is not a new thing, as we said, when we started. It's all part of executing what they have wanted to do, particularly since Netanyahu also saw an opportunity and went to bed with the far right, and they have been emboldening and threatening Netanyahu that if he makes any peace, they withdraw from the cabinet, and Netanyahu's idea of perpetuating himself as a prime minister will just collapse.
You can watch more of Ambassador Keshe's views on Israel's occupation of Gaza on Diplomatic Channel. It airs tonight at 8:30 on Sky 515 in the UK and 11:30 on DSTV. One of the most powerful storms to hit Southeast Asia, Typhoon Kajiki, has hit Vietnam's coastal areas, packing winds of up to 118 to 133 kilometers per hour. The National Center for Hydrometeorological Forecasting says this could trigger flash floods and landslides. Nearly 600,000 people were ordered to leave their homes on Sunday. Thousands of soldiers have been on standby to assist with the evacuations. Flights have been suspended at 2 airports in the central region, along with some train services. Road travel has also been suspended in Ha Tin, a northern coastal province. Vietnamese authorities say Kajiki could be as powerful as Typhoon Yagi, its most powerful storm in 30 years, which killed 300 people when it hit last year. The country's weather forecasting service says while the storm has decreased in intensity, the wind speeds remain high. A historic landmark church in the Swedish Arctic has arrived at its new home after being moved in its entirety. According to local reports, the reason it was moved is to facilitate the expansion of Europe's largest underground mine, seen as critical in the EU's efforts to break its dependence on rare earth minerals from China. For more on this, let's join our DW correspondent Arthur Sullivan in Berlin. Arthur, great to see you. Why exactly was an entire church moved from one side of town to the other?
Yeah, it's a lot of trouble to go to, so it's a good question. You really need to justify doing something like this because it's taken 8 years to plan. It's cost 45 to 50 million euros. It has involved the moving of this entire church 5 kilometers across town. So why exactly should you do it? Well, The short version is that it's been to make space for the expansion of what is already Europe's largest underground mine. Now, for well over a century, the Swedish city of Kiruna, which is way up in the country's far northern Arctic region, has been associated with mining, and specifically mining iron ore. But it's not just the church that's been moved now, it's actually the entire city centre, because as the mine expands for various reasons, the ground around the mine and around the town is getting weaker, and it's led to a risk of buildings such as this iconic 113-year-old church collapsing. Now, the good news is that the church's 2-day journey has been successfully completed. It has arrived intact at its new home after a very slow journey, which was measured at around half a kilometre per hour. And that event was live streamed. It was attended by the King of Sweden, so it certainly was a big deal up there. But actually, this story is about much more than moving a church, and it's about much more than Sweden.
It's really fascinating, Arthur. How important is this mine for Sweden and for Europe in general, and why?
Well, this is the longer version. So this is not just any old mine, and it's no longer just about iron ore. Because 2 years ago, the state-owned company which runs this mine, they're called LKAB, they made a big announcement that they had found very significant deposits of rare earths in the ground there, and that they hope to extract them. Now, many of the viewers there will know what rare earths are, but for those who don't, rare earths are these chemical elements which are needed for practically every element of modern manufacturing, particularly high-tech manufacturing. But very few countries actually produce them. Now, despite their name, they are abundant in the ground around the world, in many countries. But what is not abundant are mines where they are actually produced, because extracting, processing, and then refining rare earths is very complicated, very expensive, and very highly polluting. And China is basically the only country that has been capable and willing to do it at scale for decades. Now, what's changed is that the increasing importance of rare earths for high-tech applications, including for defense applications, it means they're now of huge strategic importance. And we saw that earlier this year when China restricted the export of some of them in response to US President Donald Trump's trade tariffs. And that really highlighted how important it was for places like Europe and elsewhere around the world to establish their own supply.
And Arthur, is Europe now going to break its dependence on China's rare earth?
Well, that's the big question that's been asked by many people across Europe at the moment in various boardrooms and political centres, and that's where the importance of Kiruna comes in. Now, it is going to take many more years for LKAB in the town of Kiruna to establish if they can, first of all, actually get the rare earths out of the ground, if there are truly enough there, if it can process them, it can refine them, and then, of course, if it all makes economic sense to do so. Now, this big expansion, which involved the moving of the church, is obviously part of that process. And this firm in Sweden is really making major efforts to do so. And these efforts come at a time when there's probably more political will across Europe than there has ever been before to support the attempts at finding rare earths as a strategic concern rather than just an economic concern. Now, I would say that in short, Kiruna represents Europe's best current prospect of having a mine capable of producing rare earths at scale in the decades ahead. And given the changing geopolitical dynamic between China, the US, the EU, and other parts of the world, it really does appear to be becoming a more urgent challenge. So that, in short, is the story of how moving this church in a small town in northern Sweden is actually tied to a much bigger geopolitical issue.
Indeed. Arthur Sullivan, thanks again for joining us on the program. And this next story is for all of the pet lovers out there. A lot of them flocked to Shanghai this Saturday for the start of the 27th Pet Fair Asia, the continent's largest pet event, which officially opened on Saturday. It held at the Shanghai New International Expo Center. Visitors were seen cuddling pets, talking to staff, and exploring new products, bringing together more than 2,600 exhibitors from 91 nations. This year's expo spanned 310,000 square meters across 17 halls. Around 510,000 people showed up on Saturday, including 120,000 industry professionals. Well, Pet Fair Asia Limited described the event as a key networking and trade hub, highlighting the Buyer Club feature, which connects companies within the industry. They also announced closer collaboration with the China Pet Expo in Beijing to expand pet exhibitions nationwide. Now, I guess you could go all puppy-eyed on this event. It does give a kind of warm, fuzzy feeling. The Chinese consulate, however, has premiered a historical documentary titled The Sinking of the Lisbon Maru, commemorating the torpedoing of the wartime freighter Lisbon Maru, the attempted mass murder of 1,816 British prisoners of war on board by their Japanese captors, and their rescue by Chinese fishermen from Zhoushan archipelago. The documentary premiered over the weekend in Lagos. The documentary being premiered by the Chinese consulate is a brief lesson in history, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War. It also marks the 80th anniversaries of Taiwan's recovery and the founding of the United Nations. The Lisbon Maru was a Japanese cargo liner built at Yokohama in 1920 for a Japanese shipping line. On her final voyage, the Lisbon Maru was being used to transport prisoners of war between Hong Kong and Japan when it was torpedoed by the submarine USS Grouper on October 1, 1942. Honouring invitation to watch the documentary is the Deputy Head of Mission at the British Deputy High Commission in Lagos, Simon Field, and other members of the diplomatic corps, as well as friends of China and Nigeria. The Chinese Consul General to Nigeria, Yan Yuqing, in English and Mandarin, explains the history behind the Lisbon Maru.
During Second World War, more than 1,800 British prisoners of war who had surrendered in Hong Kong were forcibly put aboard the Lisbon Maru by the Japanese military and transported to Japan. When passing near Dongji Island in Zhoushan, Zhejiang province, the ship was attacked and began to sink. The Japanese not only failed to rescue the British prisoners, but also locked them inside the cabin. Fortunately, local Chinese fishermen, at the risk of their own lives, rescued the British soldiers drifting at sea and brought them to the island. The brave choice and action of the Chinese fishermen changed the fate of thousands and left a touch of warmth and dignity in this heavy chapter of wartime history. It reminds us that the mission of peace rests upon each and every one of our shoulders.
Former Nigerian ambassador to China, Ambassador Oluwole Koka, says Nigeria should learn from China's quest for peace, which has led to further development in the country.
See the development that has taken place in China. If there had been no peace, and these people did not want peace, there wouldn't have been that kind of development we found in China. So I want to enjoy Nigerians, not only Nigerians, but also Africans, to always work for peace. Because without peace, there will be no development. And when you have development, you have total freedom.
Secretary General of the West Africa Association for the Promotion of Peaceful Reunification of China, Jacob Wood, appreciated all those who helped China during the war.
Today we are very great to have this film. We just tell the people, our generations, as our leader said, that the world is a big group after Hong Kong. British people in 1950s, 1940s, they're fighting Japanese, and they stand in Hong Kong. Although later something happened, but we appreciate. We appreciate all the people support the Chinese, the anti-Japanese award, especially the British soldiers, American soldiers, also all the peoples. So today we are here. We cannot forget the past.
Over 800 prisoners of war died in the sinking of the Lisbon Maru, either by drowning or being shot by Japanese soldiers as they attempted to escape from the sinking ship. But about 384 prisoners of war were rescued by nearby Chinese fishermen. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News. Do I need to say my name again? Well, that's the program. Thanks for watching.